for whenever this deal gets announced.
Por lo que me dijeron
I personally think that Josh Sargent should be the number 9.
My biggest concern is that Mexico does tend to make those little mistakes defensively, but it's the inconsistencies. With the
Isn't this inconsistent though?
He's going to be on the ground for the majority of the time. No,
I don't
look
wanna
back
say-
at highlights.
that-
No,
that's,
if you
that's the
have
Christian Pulisic treatment, though.
same.
We're gonna have to
And
stop this. We're gonna start arguing on this podcast, aren't we?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rad Football Show. As always, I'm Lizzy, U.S. editor over at 9diamond.com, covering North American football, over with my co-host, Geno. How are you?
Good. How are you? Just another beautiful day in America with a lot of things to talk about.
So
A lot
much
of
to
football
talk
going on.
about.
So much.
So much to talk about. I think to start off, we have Liga MX.
Yes.
So
Lots to
glad
talk
you
about in Liga MX. I mean, obviously a lot of games this weekend. Obviously, a full slate of games. So, bunch of good performances by a bunch of teams, which is
We'll get
fun.
into it all.
With lots of fun news, I guess. Fun in some senses, not fun in the other.
Well, we're not starting with a fun one.
Yes. Yeah.
I think to start off, we have to address Pumas and their situation with Dani Alves before this weekend's games.
Mhm.
They announced that they're terminating the contract of the player. Obviously, this comes after the news that he was jailed prior to the trial. He has a sexual harassment or sexual abuse trial going on in Spain at the moment, and he has been jailed before the hearing. And thus, the president of Pumas came out and said the incidents that are going on don't align with the team's values and the team's ethics, and they expect players to be a representation of the team symbol, both on and off the field, and his actions simply don't reflect the team. So they've decided to terminate the contract. Now, when they signed him 6 months ago, he had a year-long contract. He just featured in the Apertura, and I believe week 1 of the 2023 Clausura before everything obviously happened, and so he's been terminated after 6 months with the club. He will no longer feature. So
Yes.
that was heavy way to start.
Yes, a heavy way to
This
start.
podcast and week 3 of Liga MX.
Yes, a heavy way to
But-
start. Obviously, something we have to talk about. Something that is unfortunate we have to talk about. But as we, as I would hope everybody agrees with, this is obviously the right move from Pumas. You appreciate the swiftness with which they acted. Obviously, any of this, no matter what the situation is, it's a serious allegations, serious serious charges that are being put on Dani Alves, and something that again should not be taken lightly. So again, especially with the recent evidence that's come out, that again, it is not even just sexual abuse. It's elevated to the level of possible rape as well, which is again is something you don't want to think about, and you feel for the victim in this situation.
Yeah.
But again, you applaud Pumas for moving swiftly and showing that no matter how big the player, how big the name, how important the player, no matter what it may be, that does not come above these types of situations. So we applaud that, and obviously send our thoughts and prayers out to the victim in this situation. And again, good on Pumas for acting swiftly to just kind of take care of this.
Very well said. We over at 90 Min and obviously at Rad Football Show do not condone any type of abuse, sexual harassment, or any of that kind. So chills. So yeah, that was a very good move by Pumas. We absolutely do not condone those actions and applaud the club for handling it the way that they did. Now on the field, they brushed off the week's controversies and defeated Club Leon 4-1. So really just left it out on the field. It was a great showing. They really just bounced back and decided to give it their all, and it obviously paid off, and it was a fantastic win. And yeah, a great way to kick off this new era with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, you don't want to label it as a distraction in this situation.
Yeah.
Obviously, things are more important than sport, but when it comes to talking about the team's performance, obviously the outside distractions can hinder a team. And it was great to see from a Pumas perspective that it did not. These guys went out there, obviously, I'm sure, with this weighing over them. Obviously, the questions being asked of them, I'm sure in the press and whatnot, about the situation, this being surrounding the club for the past week or whatever it's been.
Yeah.
Um, but it's great to see. It's great to see them go out and perform to the top level, at the level that we really haven't seen them this season or in seasons past. In the
Well,
past
it's
couple.
funny you mentioned that. And since solely focusing on football,
Hmm.
Dani Alves really never molded well with the team. The team hadn't really performed to this level with him on the field. He just never fit into what they were trying to play, their system, the players.
Yeah.
Communication was broken in the back line. So it was interesting, again, solely on a football perspective. It was interesting to see the team manage so well without him on the field. And yeah, they definitely did that. It was phenomenal to watch. Great applause for Pumas for absolutely everything this weekend. Great job, Pumas.
Yes, no, yeah,
Great
it
job.
was again a great performance, and who knows, maybe Dani Alves again. I feel like we need to keep saying this is just not, none of this that goes on the field has to do with everything off the field, but maybe on the field that was the piece that was keep holding this Pumas team back. Maybe he just did not fit in that squad, and I know it seems weird that a fullback could damage the entire squad or the feeling
And
around
it
the
could.
entire squad, but it's possible. It's possible that it could. So I mean, we saw this weekend
Absolutely.
again. They played Lyon, correct? So I
Yes.
mean, not a team that is of the upper echelon of teams in the Liga MX, but
No, but
um,
they're generally expected to do well
to
and
do
not
well, yeah.
suffer a 4-1 defeat at the hands of Pumas, who last tournament drastically suffered in the league.
Yes. Yeah. And again, it's good to see them putting in efforts that are, in that level against teams
Yeah.
that are in that level, even if it's mid-table level, that's still good to see them putting in dominant efforts against those
Yeah.
sides. They had some pretty solid goals. I think the first two goals of this game were like sick, like from
Yes, I
Pumas
think.
and from Leon, like the back heel flick from Leon in this game was so cool. So, it was good quality football from Pumas, and just now they're off and running, and hopefully they can put everything off the field aside for when they are on the pitch, and can dominate on the pitch when they get that opportunity from here on out.
Yeah, and to refresh, they're fourth on the table at the moment after week 3. That's ways off of what they were in the 2022 Apertura. So excellent
Mhm.
job. We switch over to Club America, who did not do such a good job. We do not applaud the team, and they
We do
remain
not.
absolutely winless this tournament. It's the third
Terrible.
consecutive draw, this time
And
a
let's
2-2 against Puebla.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking about a third consecutive draw, and if the
Yeah.
teams that they were playing were like Monterrey, Pachuca, and Tigres, you'd be like, okay, three
Yeah.
consecutive draws isn't that bad. But again, from what I understand with my small knowledge of Liga MX, the team that they played in the first match, which I still am not even going to attempt to pronounce, and this team, which was Puebla, are
Mhm.
not in the upper echelon. I believe not in that good quality teams that they're
Yeah.
playing. And from what I understand, Club America is supposed to be of this great quality and great, expectation each and every year. This seems bad.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Listen, by the way, that first week game was Querétaro, which they tied
Querétaro.
to.
Did I do it right?
Querétaro.
Querétaro?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was fantastic. Querétaro. And yeah, this week against Puebla, it is a game, as you said, they should have won. It's the magic about this league truly is that on any given week, anyone can beat anyone, but you do
Mm.
expect higher performances and better things from Club America, especially given the dominance they held over everyone last tournament towards the end. Now, it should be said that in 2022, the Apertura, they did start a little wobbly and then towards the end gained momentum and maintained that winning streak and broke records, made history, etc. So it's not concerning as of yet that they're starting this way. And again, we're only in week 3, so it's fine. But these are teams they should be beating. These are teams I don't even want to say dominating, but at least a 1-0, you know? We saw goals from Henry Martin and Alejandro Sendejas, who we know right now is with the U.S. men's national team. Despite controversy, he actually had an excellent game. He managed the assist and the second goal, so good for him. But
yes, we should talk about him.
We shouldn't talk about
it was really a win-win for me this week because Club America did not get all 3 points, and it's Zendejas. That's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
He had a great game, scored a sick goal, and Mexico tried to cheat and use him as a player of their own, and they got caught for it. So that's illegal. And now he's in U.S. men's national team camp and apparently oppressing in U.S. men's national team camp. So that's all good things for us over here in the United States of America.
Okay, well, we'll get to your downfall in a minute. But so, though many wonder if Fernando Ortiz, Club America head coach, is in crisis mode yet, he said he is not. He has full faith in his team and the squad that they want to get out and win every single match and win in every field that they play in, etc. I don't know if I would agree with that personally. I think they should be in crisis mode just a little bit and worry about the start of the season. Again, we're only in week 3, but seeing consecutive draws is just a mediocre level that Club America should really be above. So it's not worrying, but maybe a wake-up call to say, hey, listen, we're not mediocre. We have some of the best players in the league. We should have a stronger attack. We saw what we could do towards the end of last season or last tournament. We want to keep doing that this tournament. And they just have not shown up. Maybe what they need is a slow start to gain momentum like they did last year. Who knows? Henry Martin just needs a little bit more to wake up. Maybe it's a switch of the goalkeeper. It is true that the team lacks leadership at the moment. With the departure of Memo Ochoa, there's no established captain figure. Obviously, he was that voice in the locker room and on the field. So the team might struggle with identity at the moment, but that's certainly not an excuse to maintain mediocre results or consecutive draws. And
I was just going to say, the loss of Memo Ochoa is so close before the start of the season, and that could be playing a role in them for such a big leader to exit at such a close point to the beginning of the Clausura.
Adjust and get over it.
Adjust and get over it, yes, but you need to define new leader. Somebody has to step up into that role, and I think sometimes that takes a few games. That takes a 3-game stretch where they're not performing to the level that they should be.
Right. And they're not losing, but the back line is a little bit in shambles at the moment. They're definitely struggling. For every goal, it was 5 minutes that they held their lead, and then obviously suffered another draw.
Yeah.
So it's concerning, but we shall see after week 4. We shall see. Next week is another week, is another opportunity. And we, as opposed to you, did not lose. You lost.
Yes, we did lose. We did lose. I don't really have much to say about this because this was awful. It was. I don't have much, I guess, to defend the argument here because this was pretty bad. It was bad. I have the first note I had on here was Corona made a big dumb mistake. That's how I'm gonna describe this because if you look at the goal, and again, we'll talk about the game as a whole, but if you look at the goal, there was absolutely no reason for him to come out and play that ball, and it really caused much more chaos. Ramirez Funes Mori was kind of in a difficult position, kind of going down in that position, trying to hold off the attacker, but at the same time, he kind of had it under control. If he stays in his net there would at least be the attacker was going away from goal. It's not like he was coming towards goal. I think he made it much easier on the striking or on the attacking player to put the ball in the net by the way he came out of the net. So I think that was just a awful mistake on his part. But and
Also,
I think
I want to remind it was a 1-0 against Necaxa, which makes it more embarrassing. So it's better to
it was 1-0 again Necaxa. Cruz Azul in this game, in my opinion, were, I guess, they were the better team in the first half. In the first half, they had a lot of shots on goal, missed opportunities, a lot of missed shots. The second half, they just didn't do a good enough job of getting balls into spaces. They were forcing things. They controlled a lot of possession, but they didn't really do much with it. There's, I think, a big thing that they need to figure out, like their crossing was awful the entire game. Every time they put a ball into the box, it was over everybody's head to the other side of the pitch. So it gave nobody a real chance of putting the ball in the back of the net on the crosses, especially in the second half. Antuna especially, I felt like his crossing in this match was not great at all. Like the balls were just so far over players' heads. I think they had a lot of space out wide in the first half, which is where they got a lot of their attacking options, but rightly so. Necaxa shifted to those wider areas, forced them to the middle, and they just did not do anything. What I will say is, and again, this is no excuse, but I thought the referee was not great in this game.
Oh my God. My God. We're going through that already? It's only week 3 and you're already blaming the refs?
But if you look at this match, he did not control the game very well, in my opinion. I think, and no, I don't say that his calls were wrong. I just think he could have controlled the game better. And then towards the end of the game, he gave Cruz Azul a yellow card for a foul that was less worse than, it's just it seemed there's some inconsistencies in the calls, and it seems like he could have controlled the game a little bit better because the game got really physical at a point, and then he just stopped calling fouls. So yes, when all else fails, blame the refs. I just felt like he could have done a better job of controlling the physicality of the game, because it felt like there was a lot of hard fouls. But again, it's something that I think I have to get used to, because Liga MX is much more physical. Well, not physical, but I think it's just a different style of play to the Premier League. And some things that could called in the Premier League are not called in Liga MX. So it's again, it's CONCACAF versus UEFA. It's just what you get.
It's bound to be different.
It's bound to be different, and CONCACAF is CONCACAF. So I think that's just part of the deal. But again, for my Premier League trained brain, it seemed like he could have done better.
Well, I think it's time we point out the most amazing fact that I've come across this week. Currently, Cruz Azul is 17th, second to last in the league. But
go us.
And you be the judge whether this is a coincidence or not. But this is the team's worst start to a tournament in 18 years. Woo! The time that you decide to join and become a fan, it's the worst start in 18 years. So I applaud you for that. Coincidence? I don't know. But I'm truly enjoying it.
We won Copa por Mexico. We don't need any more trophies.
I'm so glad.
We've decided that we don't want any more. We're just giving up.
Glad.
It is no coincidence that after I choose to root for a team, they have their worst start in 18 years. I mean, that's just no coincidence.
No,
it's literally no coincidence.
Super fun. Thank you so much for that. I'm truly enjoying it. So before that,
it is bad. It is very, very bad.
Terrible.
I would like, I don't know. It's just, I would like them to play better. The 2 games that I've watched fully, they've played very bad. So not very bad, just a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of just a lot of passing with no purpose.
Love that.
It's not fun.
I truly love that for you. Fun. But you know who did win? Pachuca. They won 4-1 against FC Juarez and are truly leaving behind the winner's curse. Obviously, we know they're the reigning champions. They won the 2022 Apertura, and they are doing surprisingly well given the fact that their roster is continuously picked apart. Most recently, a former leading goal scorer, Nico Ibanez. He obviously departed for Tigres and now is no longer with the club. So initially, the rumor was they were going to struggle, or the conversation was they were going to struggle without him. in the attack. And we're going to suffer somewhat of a downfall in opportunity, shots on goal, and effectiveness in that final third. But they did not. In fact, they continue to triumph and continue to dominate. The head coach Almada is doing surprisingly well, and it's exciting. Personally, I really like Mauricio Isais' goal, if that's how you pronounce it. He's a young Mexican prospect. He went to the World Cup in 2022 in Qatar as like a sparring, like one of those extra players they take just to like in training, like keep it up and the rhythm. He's really exciting. He's in the back line, so definitely a prospect to watch out for. But the fact that he's scoring already is so great. So no Champions curse for them. A great victory.
Yes.
And kind of expected because FC Juarez is just like not great. They're mediocre. So
yeah, but I mean,
great.
after a loss last week to Tigres, right? Because they lost last week to Tigres 4-1. You know, you need that bounce back against whoever you're playing. Obviously, that could be a big hit to the confidence after a 4-1 loss, no matter who you're playing. But especially when you're expecting to compete amongst the best in the league, and then you lose 4-1 to one of the better teams in the league. I think that's something that definitely can get in your head. And it's good to see them come and bounce back and have a 4-1 in their favor of their own. And if I remember correctly, they also had a big victory, a wide margin victory in the first match as well, correct? Yeah. So scoring goals, putting them in the back of the net, it's always good to see that happen. And you know, even after you lose a player who's so integral to your squad. So, so I mean, Pachuca kind of picking up right where they left off. Again, a tough game. And as I will say, I think the scoreline of the Tigres match was a little misleading with the way the last two goals came about in terms of just high pressure mistakes from a team looking to score a goal. But yeah, I think that Pachuca is a team that will be up there again with some of the in that top tier, and a team that will be competing for another trophy this season.
It's always interesting because I do think they deserve, the roster and the head coach deserve credit, because it's not one of those teams that constantly balls out during those transfer windows. They don't put out a ridiculous amount of money on certain players. Yeah. They do develop talent. Their academy is phenomenal. They've supplied great players. They supplied obviously Chucky Lozano to Italy and like Eredivisie, Eric Gutierrez as well, who played today for PSV. So they're known well for developing players, and good for them. And it's great to see them compete with great teams like Tigres, who do like pay ridiculous amount of money for just like mediocre players, I guess. But
what I will say is, you know, it's a good thing that they didn't lose. And again, please excuse me if I'm mixing up teams now, but Luis Chavez is on their team as well. So it's a good team that they. It's a good thing that they didn't lose him as well. I think that could have been like you lose two top tier players in the same offseason. That could be detrimental. Especially somebody who plays in the midfield. I think that's
I wouldn't speak too fast. There are rumors that he's linked to FC Porto, but Kevin Alvarez has also been linked to FC Porto in the past days. So transfer window has yet to close. Obviously, he was closed.
Still a week left.
Yeah, closing talks with Bayer Leverkusen. We reported that as well. They had several ongoing conversations, but things funneled over and fizzled out. So we never know. He might depart. And also their head coach is being rumored to be interviewed for the Mexican national team head coach position, which we know after Tata Martino departed has yet to be filled. He did come out on record to say that he would be prepared to take on that role. Whether he will or not is a different situation. I personally want to see Jimmy Lozano take over, but I don't know if it'll happen. So their team might be picked apart in literally 2 days.
Still, so, yeah. I mean, obviously, yes, there's still a week left of the transfer mark of the transfer window. So it is still possible. But again, I mean, I think we're seeing, you know, a solid team here right now. And again, they still do have Luis Chavez. So
they do.
As of right now, I think they look solid. If they lose him and things start to change and they have their team picked apart a little bit within the next week, and then, you know, again, possibly coach wise within, you know, the coming months, that obviously will take a massive toll, and we'll see how they can bounce back from that. But at the moment right now, they look good, and hopefully that is, you expect that to continue because they look solid, and they're only going to get better as the season goes on if they stay together.
Yeah, one would think. And I want to mention that you said it was a deceiving scoreline against Tigres because this week, over the weekend, Tigres draw 1-1 against Tijuana, which was a complete disappointment, given the fact that they had basically defeated opponents in the first 2 weeks with extremely large margins. So disappointing. Xolos are not great. Ended ridiculously low in the table last season. Should have been an easy win. It was not. So it's difficult to see that after 2 victories in the third week, that loss would come, especially against Tijuana.
Yeah.
At least a 2-1, but they definitely did not.
Yeah, I think another thing, right, is you come off 2 big victories. Obviously, the first game of the season, there's always going to be adrenaline no matter who you're playing. It's a big game no matter who you're playing because it's the first game of the season. Then the second game of the season is against a good opponent. You pull out, you're up for that one. And then the third game of the season comes around. You've won 2 games by pretty large margins. Everybody is hyping you up. And sometimes you lose focus, especially if it's against a team that you're expected to beat. So always the possibility of that. And that seems to have happened here to this Tigres team where they just didn't show up for this match like they did the last 2. And it showed. I don't think this is the Tigres team that we will see for a majority of the season, but it's also to be expected this. And this is a league where you're not, any league really. It's not even just this league. You're not going to get teams that are dominating week in and week out. And it's the teams that can dominate or play well or get those wins in games that they're not playing their best that are the teams that you often find winning the leagues at the end of the season, right? Or the teams that you find being up in contention for that. So obviously, listen, a point is better than a loss.
You would know.
Yes, I would know. We've lost out on 2 points, 2 points in the back-to-back weeks now. The games we did not draw. We would be tied with Club America if we did tie them because Club America only has 3 points. Mm-hmm. We're not. But if Club America tie next weekend, Cruz Azul win, then actually no, it's impossible because
on those predictions.
Well, Cruz Azul isn't playing next weekend, so it wouldn't be possible, which I have a question about it. Do teams take off weeks? Is there a bye week? I didn't see them on the schedule in where I was looking. But yeah, I mean, when who do they play? Let's see. Yeah, they don't play again until not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after.
I will
against
research that. I will research that. I did not see that.
Tigres.
Yeah.
But yes, to get back to what we were saying, again, a point is better than no points, but in a season which is different than a lot of other seasons we see, where you play teams twice, you can't be losing your games to a team that you're only going to play once in this tournament. So, yeah. That's against bad teams that you're only see once.
Yeah. The last team I want to touch on. Well, okay. Before that, Chivas lost, against Toluca. I've said
just glossing over the Chivas loss.
Yeah, I mean, they're suffering with a couple injuries, whatever. Alexis Vega is out still, whatever. He is back training independently, even though they said his return is estimated towards March, which is a little strange to see him work out so swiftly when his return isn't slated for another 2 months. But anyway, we move on. The last victory that I want to talk about is Rayados 3-1 over Atlético San Luis. It was a great victory. Rogelio Funes Mori hat trick, which would have been so hard to do in Qatar. Well, I know it would have been hard to do because he had literally played 10 minutes, but still.
He would have had to play.
It would have been hard to do in the months leading up to Qatar.
Yes.
So happy for him, but
would
also
have been nice.
Why now? That's a little unfortunate. But Rayados is an interesting team. Their fan base is very strong. So good for them. Good on them. And just after the third weekend, the top 5 teams are Tigres, Pachuca, Monterrey, Pumas, and Santos Laguna, who also, by the way, bounced back and won
Yes.
2-1 against where
Mazatlan.
I think it was Mazatlan.
Yes.
Phenomenal win.
Yes.
Excellent
So I mean,
showing
that's
by
again
Carlos Salcedo.
good for them too, because you said they had their team picked apart a little bit this season.
Yes.
This offseason.
Also, they have announced the return of Santi Munoz, who's an interesting figure because he had gone to Newcastle and he was playing in their under 20 team for a while. He was never really given a shot at their senior team, but it was a loan. And once that ended, he reported back. He suffered a slight injury, so he's training by himself at the moment, the team announced, but he's being reincorporated into Santos Laguna, which is definitely a positive for them because they need the players at the moment and they need the attack. And he's a great prospect. I mean, he's young. I believe he's 19 years old. So it's definitely very exciting. That doesn't mean his career in Europe has come to an end. Obviously, he was a loan and he's young and anything can happen. And he might just thrive in Liga MX and jump back out again. Also, in a return from Europe, we're hearing several reports of Diego Lainez coming back and going to Tigres for like 7 million, I believe. Talks are ongoing, nothing official at the moment, but would be interesting. It's the reason I do say and remain adamant on the fact that every Liga MX player should go to Europe, because the worst case scenario is you rely on Liga MX again and you come back, as opposed to spending your entire career there. So but
you got to try. You got to try and make the move.
You got to go. And if not, you come back. He's 22, so anything might happen still. I believe he wanted to stay in Europe, but offers are complicated, especially with the fact that he hasn't played a full game in about 3 years. Concerning. But there's something we're not seeing. But
definitely not good. I mean, again, you want to move up to Europe. Maybe he could have stayed in Liga MX a couple extra years just to give him some more experience.
He could have gone to Ajax, which would have been an excellent choice over Real Betis, which is La Liga, because Eredivisie is just so much more of a formative league when you're so young. Could have really taken that mold, learned to play better with like technique, and then jumped up from that. But that's a whole different conversation we don't have to get into.
We don't have to have that today.
No, especially because we have Leagues Cup. They announced last week the final group stage announcement, saying all the groups and all the teams that are facing one another. But before we get into that announcement and going behind each group and saying group of death and our favorite confrontations, we're going to explain the tournament.
Yes. Honestly, I'm still confused about the tournament and a couple of its rules. So, it's good. I think it'll be good for everybody to get a good idea of this tournament. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, first time we've ever had, and we'll talk about this, all of the teams from both leagues in this tournament. So it is a full Leagues Cup,
full tournament,
World Cup for North America of sorts.
Yes. So let's dive right in before questions. So the tournament inaugurated in 2019, and it was 8 teams competing in a single elimination tournament. Basically 4 teams from MLS and 4 teams from Liga MX, kind of like a quick little competition with the same type of schedule as the CONCACAF Champions League, where no league stopped, and it was just an added game to their already created calendars. And then in 2020, it was obviously canceled because of COVID, so they came back in 2021. The idea for the second edition of the tournament was to expand from 8 teams to 16 to create that stepping stone, but it wasn't done. It was maintained at 8 teams, 4 and 4, and it was done again in the same single elimination manner. Now, the first edition, Cruz Azul won. The second edition, León won. So MLS teams have yet to win Leagues Cup tournament. But this year,
it's a whole different story this year, though.
It's a completely different story. It's a new format. It's a new way of playing. So for the first time ever, all Major League Soccer and all Liga MX teams will be participating in this tournament. It will be a month long in July, pausing Major League Soccer in midst of Clausura and Apertura. So they will come together and play in a group stage, then obviously round of 16, semifinals, quarterfinals, etc., in a World Cup style tournament. So
Gotcha.
as you know,
So is there a way that this round of 32 will be picked? Is it going to be a draw after the round of 32 is decided, or is it going to be like Group South 1 plays Group South 2, or Group
They
South
haven't
1A plays?
given complete details on that. I
Gotcha.
think at the
Okay.
moment they've just, after announcing the groups, they're formulating the bracket.
Yep.
But there's several groups, which is so exciting. So the way that they ranked them is a little confusing, as it would. Also, all group stage matches will be played in the United States and Canada. By Canada, I just mean the Canadian MLS teams that obviously include Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. No teams and no games will be played in Mexico. The Liga MX president had mentioned financial benefits of that decision. So obviously we know the money's in the US, which, is a completely different story.
I mean, listen, as I've said, I said to you before,
Yeah.
I feel like it's so weird that they wouldn't play games in
It is
Mexico. I
really
know they're playing games in Canada and in the US. You would think they would just also play games, even if it's only in a couple locations in Mexico, just to kind of have a little bit of use it as a little bit of a World Cup warm up to just continue to, if you do this and then say Copa America ends up being in the US as everything as has been thought of a possibility. And, another tournament being played in the US before this World Cup. I mean, I think that's it continues to allow us to figure out how this would work in the United States,
Right.
Mexico, and Canada. And I feel like I did that in the wrong Mexico, United States, Canada. But I think it would give them just another opportunity to kind of test the waters with what this World Cup in 2026 will be like. So it's weird that they don't have any games in Mexico. I would probably prefer them to be in there just because I feel like, one, it's only fair, and two, but again, like you say, money rules, cash rules. So that is
it is something Liga MX fans are complaining about, and I understand the controversy. It is confusing. If you said all of the United States and excluding Canada, it would have made more sense, but different story. So the way that the teams were ranked and formatted into their groups was, as it is, confusing. So the top 15 MLS teams, which were ranked by regular season Supporter Shield standings, were categorized by location, their region, Central, West, East, and then placed based on their position in the 2022 Supporters Shield standings.
Yes.
And then Liga MX teams were also ranked. And then the teams basically were placed vice versa. So that the number 1 MLS team would face the number 15 Liga MX team and the other way around. So matched. And that created several groups. Obviously, LAFC and Pachuca were excluded from these rankings and from the group stage because they are reigning champions of their individual leagues and get a bye week or by the group stage and advance directly into the second round in these World Cup tournament. That's their reward for winning the league, as one should. So we're going to put up the groups at the moment.
Yes, these are the groups.
To go through.
15 groups we have here, just 3 in the West, then 4 in the Central, South, and East. Again, I think this is, it's crazy to look at this, and I feel like this kind of gives you an idea of just, you look at
chaos.
You look at the way things are in England or the way they are in France and the way they are in Germany, and it's like, it just shows you kind of the scale that this country is compared to some of the other countries in Europe. And the way that the North America works as a continent. Again,
it's
even
complicated. The distances are extreme. Miami to LA is about a 5-hour plane ride. So making it east, west, central, it does
It
make
just makes,
sense, obviously, in South.
especially in a quick tournament format where
Yeah.
it's all over a month. You can't be flying from Miami to LA on a day within
On a
3 days
Tuesday.
on a Tuesday to play on a Wednesday. And
Yeah.
then on Thursday, you're flying back to, New York. Like, you just
Yeah.
can't do that. It's just
There
not,
was
it's not.
those that didn't rank obviously in the top 15 and vice versa were placed to individual groups depending on where the holes lie and how they managed geographically. So
Mhm.
definitely very interesting. Now, my question to you is group of death.
Yeah, I think it's hard, right? Because with the amount of teams, and this is something I've talked about with the World Cup as well, with the amount of teams that you have in a tournament like this, when there's 47 teams, I think it is,
Yeah.
that are being included in this tournament, it's hard to have a group of death, especially the way they're doing it ranking wise, because I think for the most part, you're going to have one team that just may not belong. But with that said, I do
Okay.
think that there's two groups that can vie for the group of death.
Okay.
One in the South and one in the East, I think. And this is
Okay.
going based on the fact that I think all three teams in the end will be evenly matched up.
Okay.
I
That makes
think
sense.
the one group will be South 3, which is Cruz
Oh,
Azul,
okay. I
Inter
agree. I
Miami.
agree. I
Cruz
agree.
Azul, Inter Miami, and Atlanta. Obviously, Atlanta is going to get a bad rap with that because Atlanta had a bad season last year.
But they're a
But
difficult team to beat,
they're a difficult
especially at
team to
home.
beat. They're a difficult team to beat at home. They have a revamped team now. They did have a good end to the season last season.
Yeah.
So you also get Inter Miami, who has added some really good players and still adding players. And you get a Cruz Azul team who is not currently in the upper echelon of teams. They're in the mid-table. Obviously, right now they're in 17th, but I think that they'll end up being mid-table. So I think that's a really difficult group. And then I think a group that may not be looked at as the group of death, but is probably up there, is the East 3 group with New York City FC, Atlas, and Toronto. Because I think
New York City FC is being picked apart,
yeah,
though.
but that's why I think it's going to be close, right? Because
Okay.
New York City FC is getting seeded much higher than their ability is, I
Yeah,
think,
they are.
for this season, because they're getting picked apart. They're getting seeded on last year's team and last year's season. So I think that they'll be worse than they were last season. So they fall down to the
Definitely.
levels of Atlas and Toronto. I think Toronto will be better than they were last season. I think Toronto
Yeah.
had a really bad season. They'll be better. And I think Atlas kind of falls right in the middle there. So I think they can put up
Yeah.
a competitive game and provide a competitive experience, in both those matches that they have to play. So that is
I like
why
your
I
choices.
see those as my two groups of death, I guess.
I like your choices. And I want to bring the interesting factor back to South 3, which is Cruz Azul, Atlanta United, and Inter Miami. Inter Miami obviously just signed Joseph Martinez, who used to be the king of Atlanta United.
Yes.
So seeing that duel will definitely be interesting. Obviously, they'll face each other prior in MLS, but it'll be an interesting face-off. And obviously, I welcome Cruz Azul to Miami. I'm excited to go to that game. I'm excited to cover it from the press box. It's always exciting to see Liga MX versus MLS. We saw it last year in All-Stars, and it was super exciting for me. I think as a Mexican American, when your two cultures kind of just like clash in a competitive manner, it's always so exciting. You hear the Spanglish, you hear the English. It's just it's so much fun. So I'm definitely looking forward to that game. Now, I want to bring up another interesting group. I believe it's Central 3, Sporting Kansas City, FC Cincinnati.
This was another
and
group I
Chivas
was
de
thinking about
Guadalajara.
too.
Now, from an interest perspective and kind of hopping into the tea of it all. So the three of these teams have had previous contact. Like Alan Pulido, who we know suffered a knee injury last year and was out all season, is slated to return. Head coach Peter Vermes did say that he's slated to be back on that first game of the season on February 25th. though he did mention just because he's ready doesn't mean I'll play him. But we know this tournament is in July, so he'll probably be back and at it. He used to be a former leading goal scorer with Chivas de Guadalajara, even led them to a trophy. And he's beloved within the team, even rumored at one point to go back. So will definitely be an interesting face-off. We have exclusive quotes from him on 90min.com/US addressing the situation, saying that game basically motivates him to work harder and come back because he's really excited. He also mentioned whether or not he will celebrate a goal against them. So we'll leave that to you to read on our website. And Chivas de Guadalajara recently reached out to FC Cincinnati to sign Brandon Vazquez, their forward. They obviously declined the option. Brandon Vazquez has said that he is very comfortable with FC Cincinnati right now. He believes in their project, that talks were ongoing, but he sat down with the team's management, FC Cincinnati's management, and was just so excited by the project that they planted in front of him so that he wanted to stay. So for him to score a goal then against Chivas would just be an interesting situation. And as a Club America fan, would be hilarious to watch. So definitely interesting.
For sure. And I think that group is also like interesting from a competitive standpoint too, because again, Sporting Kansas City is a team that is going to be better, I think, than they were last season. Like we don't see a Peter Vermes coach team being as bad as Sporting Kansas City was last season. Defensively, they'll be better. They'll be better overall.
Obviously, they did suffer a lot of injuries. I believe it was the first time in Major League Soccer that all of their DPs were injured at the same time. Now we know Gatti is coming back as well. He suffered that same type of injury as Alan Pulido, so he's coming back. Alan Pulido is obviously coming back, and they've made a couple of reinforcements to the roster. So they definitely should have a stronger season. We've known Peter Vermes to lead a strong team. He's been with Sporting Kansas City for years and years. So
I mean, he's a great coach.
Shouldn't be that last spot.
Yeah, he's a great coach. So that will definitely be an interesting group. I think the Central groups kind of, those two, Central 3 and Central 4, kind of got the short end of the stick in terms of this. Because like the other two groups like Club America, and no disrespect to St. Louis City and no disrespect to Columbus, but Club America should walk through that group.
They really should walk through that team.
And it's really going to be for the second spot. And then Central 2, again, no disrespect to Puebla and no disrespect to Chicago.
Minnesota,
but even with Minnesota like being as bad as they were towards the end of last season, they dealt with injuries as well. So they should find it pretty easy to get through there.
Especially given the fact that Chicago had like one thriving player and he has since left.
And he's gone.
Aston Villa. Obviously, we know it's John Duran. He did well. Not enough for the team to even crack the top 10, but he tried his best. He's since departed to the Premier League. So Chicago Fire are really just left, I think, with Shaqiri and 10 more. So
and wait, I'm looking it up right now, but isn't
their goalkeeper as well? Yeah,
Slonina
has also departed towards the Premier League. He signed with Chelsea, so
they might be really bad this year.
They're really bound to be terrible.
So that group is going to be. Is there a group in the West that you see as a group that could be? I have one that I think could be kind of tight, but again, I think the West is. You're probably going to find.
The West is interesting to me. I think West 1 could be really interesting. Tigres versus Portland.
Mm-hmm.
But also West 3, like Galaxy versus León. Whitecaps are a toss-up. They can sometimes be really good and sometimes be really bad. Their inconsistencies are just shocking to me. So that'll be interesting. I do think it'll be between Galaxy and Club León. The West, like, beyond Tigres and Monterrey at the moment, seem mediocre. But then you have Monterrey and Seattle Sounders. Seattle Sounders obviously just won the CONCACAF Champions League and become the first MLS team to do so. So they might be interesting, but we know that after winning that trophy, they went completely downhill in Major League Soccer. So they're an inconsistent team as well.
Yeah. I think it depends. Like, I think that group West 2 is like a group that could end up being an interesting group, but it also could end up being just like Monterrey walking away with it. Because
Yeah, and
like
I think
Real
it'll end
Salt
that
Lake,
way.
yeah, and Real Salt Lake like did compete for a play. I think they were in the playoffs last season. And I can't
Yeah,
get it
but
off the top of my head,
they have
but
a
they're
mess
like,
at the moment.
yeah, they're like you
They're a
said,
little
they're a mess. So like I
messy.
think it's like there's a lot of uncertainty between Real Salt Lake and Seattle to see what they will become.
Yeah.
Same with Portland and Seattle. I mean, Portland and San Jose. You don't know where they're going to be.
San Jose is an interesting project to me.
Yeah.
Historically, they've been terrible. Um, but we know a new coach is heading in, Luchi Gonzalez. He was an assistant coach under
Mm-hmm.
Greg Berhalter at the World Cup for the U.S. men's national team. We actually spoke to him a couple weeks ago in an exclusive interview, which will also come out in a few weeks. But he spoke heavily on using that national team strategy and having that impact and obviously the new project that he has, which he did keep under wraps. I asked him what the idea and motivation is in the locker room, and he said he will be keeping that to himself at the moment, just to motivate his guys to do better. They've just naturally been horrible in the West, so maybe with that new push from Luchi Gonzalez, they'll be better. I I do think it'll be a push. I don't know if it'll be enough to beat Portland Timbers. They're not going to beat Tigres.
Yeah.
Tigres is just doing too well at the moment and signing great players, but they might fight for that second spot. I also don't know if they have the depth for it,
Mm-hmm.
but actually that's a conversation for a lot of these teams. I don't know if they have the depth for more than one tournament.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I'm excited for this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. Me too. I think
Yeah.
it's interesting because again, each of these groups, two teams are coming out of the group, so it's not
Yeah.
like there's only one team that ends up losing. It's not like
That is so embarrassing.
yeah, that's a tough thing, and that's again the one thing that I have a problem with the 48 team World Cup possibility, and with this setup with 3-team groups. I think it just creates a I don't know. I feel like 3 teams per group, separating it. I feel like it's better when there's 4 teams per group, but this is a
Yeah.
experiment here that we're going to try with Leagues Cup, and hopefully it continues. I mean, I know we joke here with the Inter Miami Leagues Cup champion, but I also I don't hate their team right now. You have to see how it all works out. They made some
I don't
some
know.
good moves. Like, I don't think they're probably not going
They
to win it
did make
all,
some
but
good moves.
I think that they're going to be much more competitive than they were last season. But again, what I
But
also
again, they're still being coached by Phil
I
Neville.
was just about to say
So
they're still being coached by Phil Neville, which I don't exactly believe is the right decision. So
yeah.
as much as they've made improvements on the roster, I'm not sure that they can
It's difficult to
overcome
say.
that.
But before we wrap up, I just want to ask you for your preliminary winner. I know it's early.
It's
Who do you
hard,
think will
right?
win?
It's hard because it's like I don't know what the format of this
It's fine.
knockout
It's
round
just
is,
a
right?
toss up. We'll come
So,
back to this in August and be like, "Ha, I told you."
oh God, I mean, this is like yeah, it's hard for me to think about conceptually like that, but I think, and I think the way this tournament's going to go is whoever's hot going into the tournament is probably going
Yeah.
to come out on top. But I think you can see Tigres winning it. I don't see. I'm gonna say flat out LAFC or Pachuca will not win it. That's what I'm gonna say. I don't think either of them win it.
Okay.
Cruz Azul definitely will not win it. That's definitely not happening. So I'm gonna go with maybe Tigres and maybe, honestly, would not surprise me if Union somewhere around there.
Oh, okay.
They just seem to be such a well-run team that they just
Yeah.
always end up somewhere deep in playoffs in these types of tournaments. I could totally see them being there. So those would be the 2
Okay.
teams. But again, it really depends on what's
On the
happening, then
moment.
injuries, what the format of this thing is. Because, if Union draw somebody really difficult in their round of 16, then it's not gonna it may not matter. So
I'm gonna second your Union, but I'm gonna go for a hot take. Be like, Santos Laguna is gonna win it. The Union
there
aren't
you
gonna get
go.
But I think Santos Laguna is going to lift the trophy.
There you go. Santos Laguna, the first new edition Leagues Cup champions with everybody in it. It will, I mean, there's a lot of teams I know it won't be. So that's
but
easy.
that's a different story.
That's a different story. But there's
That's
a lot
a
of teams
completely
I know it
different
won't
story.
be.
But we will be covering that tournament as we do all North American football.
Sure.
In a couple of weeks, Major League Soccer will be starting, so that's very exciting. We will continue to cover Liga MX and bring you the latest news on absolutely all North American football. Like, subscribe, keep watching, and follow us on our Twitter. We release exclusive quotes every so often, so definitely catch there. And thanks so much for listening. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.